Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name's Christopher Luft. I'm a co-founder here at LimaCharlie, and with me is Maxime Lamothe-Brassard, our CEO, founder, and the original architect of the SecOps Cloud Platform. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's moving incredibly fast, and that is the integration of AI and cybersecurity. In particular, we're going to be talking about our approach, which is probably going to be a little bit different than any you've encountered before. What we want to share with you is how we've approached bringing AI into cybersecurity using the same philosophy that guides everything we build at LimaCharlie. It took us a minute, but we spent the time to figure out how we could deliver AI as an unopinionated, massively scalable service that gives you control rather than taking it away. So here's what you can expect from this webinar. We're going to talk about the principles that guide our product design. Then we're going to walk through our journey with AI, everything from the early skepticism to the meaningful production grade features that we've delivered today. And then we're going to showcase how AI is already currently integrated into the platform. So that's everything from our support bot, our rule building assistant, a native LLM service paired with our playbooks feature, and most recently our secure MCP server. And for this last part, Eric Capuano, one of the founders of the Digital Defense Institute, is going to be joining us to show us something he's built using LimaCharlie's MCP server. After all of that, we'll talk about where we see this going and wrap things up. So let's kick things off by talking about the foundation, our product philosophy, and how that mindset has influenced everything from architecture to AI. When talking about the characteristics of the SecOps Cloud Platform, we say things like API first, scale up and scale down dynamically, pay only for what you use, all of the same characteristics as any major cloud provider like AWS or GCP. When talking about the design philosophy behind how we build things, we talk about being the undifferentiated heavy lifters for companies and being unopinionated in how we deliver tools and capabilities. Maxime, when we say undifferentiated heavy lifting and unopinionated design, what does that actually mean to you in practice as it relates to the way we deliver cybersecurity tools and capabilities?
Yeah, it means that the way you're going to interact with LimaCharlie at the end of the day really allows you to do the things that are in your mind that you know that you want to implement, right? Cybersecurity is very, very wide, from service providers to enterprise to product builders, but even just on service providers, not every company is the same, right? And in fact, service providers are dealing with this at such a big scale, right? They have hundreds or thousands of customers. And if you are stuck in one specific way of doing things, this is going to drastically limit how you can go and differentiate yourself. So in LimaCharlie, by taking this unopinionated approach, what it means is that we make it extremely easy for you to go and do the thing that you want to do. It's not for us to go and tell you, hey, this is the one thing that this looks bad and evil, and like this is the one thing you can do. By doing that, you can really differentiate yourselves. You can automate all kinds of things. And candidly, what we see from our users is that they do things that we never even thought about. And the only way that you can do that is by taking that approach. So we're really, really strict about taking that approach of being unopinionated, because we know that's really the superpower for LimaCharlie.
Yeah, and I do want to make a small clarification here as well. I think a lot of times when people hear us talking about the product like this, they think they have to build everything, but that's not the case at all. We have many out-of-the-box solutions like EDR with fully curated detection rules, where you simply install the EDR, select the rule set you want, and you're good to go. It's just that you can continue to build on those things if you choose, or build towards your own vision right from the beginning.
That's right. That's right. And the way that I always compare it, right, is AWS, right? If you want a virtual machine and do everything like on yourself, you always can do that. But if all you're looking for is a MySQL database, there's an AMI, there's an easy button to do that. But because the foundation is built so that you do have this ability, it means that the most people that do seek, this easy mode, very shortly after using the easy mode, really appreciate being able to say, and I'm also going to do this one thing that I want to be doing.
Yeah, it's like start with a crawl and walk and run, and you're building solutions that solve the problems that are unique to your organization in a way that's super cost effective.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and so how does this philosophy work for customers that are working with third party tools or bringing in their own workflows?
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? When you start from the perspective of a cloud provider, it changes your whole worldview, right? If you start from the perspective of like, hey, I'm a cybersecurity vendor, I do it all for everybody, and I'm the best, and nobody should have my data, guess where you go, right? But when you start from the perspective of, no, we're making product and capabilities for people to use, anybody to use in any context, it means that all of a sudden this idea of what can I bring into this platform, obviously the answer becomes, well, anything and everything that you'd like, right? It's that's where the unopinionated kind of like shines as well, when that's the baseline. And the other side of that medal is true as well. Meaning, if you go and you say, hey, I have this other system that I really, I really love, and I'm running like great playbooks on this thing, and you want to leverage LimaCharlie to go and communicate into that system and drive it and extend it, you always can, because fundamentally that's what a cloud is, right? A cloud is open APIs, open documentation, everything is available to everybody.
Yeah, transparency comes up a lot in our discussions, and I think that's basically what we're talking about there, is that you own your data, you can send it where you want, you can pull things into the platform. We don't gate anything. Even our documentation is publicly available.
Exactly, exactly. And all of that stems from a different, philosophy. And you will see that, I mean, think back on IT, right? Where would we be if we didn't have AWS? I think within a few years, we're kind of going to look at it the same way with a SecOps Cloud Platform, and hopefully that's LimaCharlie. But fundamentally, we think that we need a neutral cloud provider for those security capabilities.
hmm Yeah. So when I think about the history of AI at LimaCharlie, it did start with a bit of healthy skepticism. I think that was mostly driven by just the previous years of AI marketing hype that never really materialized into anything. And I think that made us really cautious approaching it. However, I want to say it was around maybe like ChatGPT 3.5, like 2022, 23. We started to see that this was actually going to be something and evolve. And so we started to run some experiments internally and really get familiar with it. Is that sort of how you remember things?
I think so. I think so. I think in that year, we kind of all realized that there's something different about that wave of AI that was really going to be major, but it wasn't immediately clear that we could actually get value right there and then. That's how I remember it.
Yeah, the hallucination problem was so much worse back then. And, I still think it's something that prevents LLMs from being in the decision path for critical applications, but it's gotten so much better with, tuning and grounding techniques and stuff like that.
The other part of it, I think, is that we as humans have learned how to wield that new tool, right?
Yeah.
And there's things that are counterintuitive about how you think, and building workflows and like building capabilities using AI, and it just takes a while for folks to kind of for the community as a whole to kind of realize all of these bits of like, hey, this worked, this didn't work,
Mhm.
let's figure it out. And I think, I don't know if you have the same reference point, but I feel like sometime last year we started to see that pivoting point where it was really clear that we could start building interesting capabilities and that
Mhm.
could become product.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing how fast it's all moving. I remember back in the beginning, we built our own RAG system to do our first crack at a support bot. And it was amazing that it worked, but it was kind of fragile because we're doing all this stuff ourselves. And then Google basically created a service to manage all of that for us. So we moved it onto Google, and it's been working for us great. For anybody watching, if you're curious, you can easily test the support bot, which we affectionately call Chuck, at doc.limacharlie.io. The bot has been performing really well for people visiting the doc site. We're using a technique called grounding to make sure it's not making things up. And I even used it internally this morning to answer a question for a customer that I wasn't 100% sure about. So a lot of value there, I think, for us. And we also integrated the same bot with our support channel on our community forum at community.limacharlie.io. So the bot will answer questions posted into the support channel, and the engineer will loop themselves in if they need any follow up. So it's been really great for just getting people answers fast, and again, like, was our first touch point with this technology in a way that brought value to our customers. So
Yeah, I
um,
think this level one is really not contentious anymore, right? Like level
Yeah.
one AI, meaning the copilot, the chatbots, like all of that stuff is a no brainer, just eliminating toil.
Yeah, yeah. And then so the next thing we did was add some Copilot style AI functionality into the web app, and I can just pull that up here. LimaCharlie provides a wide set of curated detection and response rules out of the box, but sometimes you need to write something custom, which I think folks can find intimidating. You know, new platform, new language. It takes a little while to get used to it. So we've kind of integrated it here. So you can see I'm on the detection and response rules page. These are a bunch of the curated rules I was talking about before that you can just add to your org. But if I want to make a specific rule here, I will just go, let's call this test rule. And I'm going to get AI to help me out. And I'm going to say, write me a detection that fires when someone opens a file in the documents folder on Windows during Pacific business hours. So not a super real world use case here, but a good example. And I'm going to leave the spelling mistake because AI can figure this stuff out. So I'll just ask a question here. So here's a rule. It comes with a full description of what the rule does. And, you know, you can take a look over it. And if it's to your liking, hit accept. It drops in there. You can even do the same for the response here. So again, I'll just simple for this example, report this detection into the team. And I'll just hit ask. There we go. Accept. Our rule's ready to go. We can give it a name. Test rule, create. And there you go. And you can see down here, if you wanted to, you can test a rule against historical telemetry. We call this feature replay. Some people use it to build sort of integration tests into their rules. Very useful feature. So after we built those features in, we started to think about how we could deliver AI as an unopinionated service. And I'm going to pass this off to Maxime to walk us through this and show us an example of something he built. Maxime?
Yeah. So exactly. So like Chris mentioned, this unopinionated bit was really critical for us. And so what that meant is, as we progress into the complexity of this AI solutions, what we did not want to do is, hey, here's this one magic AI, it tells you where you have been hacked and just trust us, it's going to find all the things. Some might do that. That's just not our thing. So what it means is that we kind of did two core pieces of infrastructure. That's how we think about it on our side, to go and enable people to use their own AI and their own capabilities. All the way from I'm running this thing on-prem, my own like AI custom model, all the way to, I don't want to manage, an on-prem AI, but I have these flows, I have these prompts that I want to have operated as an agent in LimaCharlie. What you're going to see here is a combination of two different capabilities in LimaCharlie that really work well together, that leverages AI. Particularly, it leverages AI, but the AI, the agent that you define, how you want it to run. So the first component of this is actually not AI. Right. So what we have here is a playbook. So playbooks in LimaCharlie is it's Python playbook. This is a playbook that we have made that quite simply just takes markdown text, a description of a detection, and sends it by email to somebody. So the whole kind of pitch here for this is, we want to automate that when certain types of detections occur, we want to generate a report to a customer. Maybe I'm an MSSP or I'm a service provider or whatever. I want to generate a PDF report that goes to one of my customers. So this is what this, simple Python does, right? It will take some markdown and it will generate the PDF using like a library in Python. And it will send it to through an SMTP server that I chose to use. Pretty straightforward. Here's where the interesting bit comes in, is generating that summary, right? So summarizing is sort of one of those low-hanging fruits for AI agents. And so that's why I'm starting here. So the way that it's doing this is by calling the next component, which we'll go into, which is our AI agent engine. Because I said earlier, right, we don't want to have like this, all, what you see is what you get. That's the only thing that you get. Instead of building an agent, we created an agent for you, an engine for you to run your agents, fully managed within LimaCharlie. So there's nothing for you to go and deploy. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm just saying, hey, I have this AI, this agent. I want you to go and ask it to summarize this alert and then pass on the alert data that I got in this playbook to that AI. And then what we'll do is we'll pass it on to, the PDF and send it kind of the old automation type. So, what does this look like? So in LimaCharlie, you define those agents, like I mentioned. So I have, the summarizer agent. So you can see this is a very basic prompt, right? I just wrote a prompt. I said, hey, you're a cybersecurity expert. You're going to get a detection. You're going to summarize it. Make sure to include MITRE. This can be whatever you want, right? You could say, actually, this is for an IT team because I'm going to be sending firewall misconfigurations through this. And I want to provide them like a really good explanation of the ports that need to be changed. Could be anything. So all you have to do is you just encapsulate it like that in your agent. And then what you are able to do is you're able to manually trigger it. So I could go and I could just say, hey, I want to manually test this, like put a detection in here, the data and just like send it and get, whatever that agent decides to return. But in our case, what we're doing, right, is it's the playbook that's doing this. And so we also have a way where you could go and just, I forget what I called it. I called the playbook this. So you can just go and trigger that playbook manually, give it, your data from your detection. You can specify the credentials. So that's something that is not necessarily obvious, but you can specify the credentials that your AI agent has access to. So this allows you to go and really create good guardrails around what the agents and the playbooks can do so that, it doesn't get all the permissions to all the things or something really dangerous like that. So you can really, keep it on rails. And so I could go and I could just run that playbook, click run, and we would go all the way through, receive that email. Now in practice, right, it's interactive. Well, that's the beauty of LimaCharlie because we're built like infrastructure. It's all Lego blocks. It means that triggering that playbook can be done through a detection and response rule. So now I can have an automation rule. Maybe I asked AI to generate it for me that will go and will say, hey, when I see this firewall misconfiguration, send, this event, this piece of telemetry to my playbook and kickstart that whole process. So all of these things are designed to be, really customizable easily that way. And look, don't build your own playbook from scratch, right? That's kind of the point that we're at now is go on ChatGPT, use, some advanced model, tell the thing that you're trying to do, so you can kind of really accelerate across the whole chain and get access to solutions that are exactly what you need, really, really customized, really easily. That's kind of the beauty of it. You're not stuck thinking, well, what vendor of playbook and AI do I get that has the one specific thing that is exactly what I need? It's just all there. So the last thing I'll mention is, well, okay, that's cool. I mentioned that the AI has access, right, to some things, and the credentials, and that kind of dovetails into the next part of the conversation where I'll pass it on to Chris, which is around how do we expose components of LimaCharlie, APIs of LimaCharlie to AIs in general. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, Max. And, so on the back end of that is something called the MCP server, which we've now exposed publicly. For those of you that do not know what a model context is, it's just a way to give an AI agent structured and secure access to external tools, services, data, all the good stuff. The Model Context Protocol, or MCP, is a new standard that makes this kind of access possible in a consistent and safe way You can think of it as a communication layer that allows AI agents to interact with the real world in a controlled and observable manner. So we built our own MCP server to bring this concept into the security operations space. It gives AI agents access to the things they need: telemetry, detection, logic, automation, tools, without opening the door too wide. You get to define the context. You decide what the agent knows and what it can do. The server enforces a context and handles the back and forth between the agent and the platform. And it's really amazing. It turns this AI from something that simply generates text into something that can actually work within your environment. It can analyze real data, trigger real actions, and stay completely within the boundaries you set. So let me show you what that looks like in practice for LimaCharlie. For this first part of the demo, I'm going to show you how easy it is to connect something like Claude Code to an organization inside of LimaCharlie and give you a sense of what you can do. Okay, so for this part of the demo, I'm going to show you how easy it is to connect something like Claude Code to an organization inside of LimaCharlie. So I'm just going to pop over to my test organization here that I set up and go to Access Management. In here, you'll see REST API. What I'm going to want to do is come up here and copy the OID, and I'm also going to want to create an API key. As you can see in here, we have very fine-grained permissions on the API key. Same with user accounts. So you can choose exactly what humans or machines have access to, what they can read, what they can write, all that good stuff. For this example, I'm just going to select them all, and we'll call this my MCP test key. We'll grab that, and then I'm going to pop over to my terminal here. So in the terminal, there we go. You can see I've got a command. This is in the docs. I'm not going to walk you through it, but it just basically puts our authorization in the request. We're going to push it up. It is now ready to go. We hit spelling Claude, and now we're in Claude Code. We're going to do /MCP. As you can see in our managed MCP servers, we have LimaCharlie. It's connected. If we hit enter, we get some options. We can view the tools. You can see all of the available sort of methods that it's able to execute. And to show you how that works, I'm just going to say, give me a list of all sensors. Well, let's call them endpoint sensors. Endpoint sensors online via the LimaCharlie MCP. And so it is a little bit slow going through Claude Code on the terminal here because it's going to ask me if a bunch of stuff's okay, but I just want to show you how easy it is to get your hands in there and start playing with this stuff. Eric's demo coming up will show you what's possible programmatically where things are going to move a lot faster. All right, so we got a sensor online. It's a Linux server that I've had sitting on this box for years now. I haven't looked at it in forever. So now that we have that, we know it's online. Let's ask it to summarize the log this machine over the last 24 hours. I think this one will take a little bit more reasoning to get through, but it's kind of fascinating. And you can see how this becomes addictive very fast when you're able to just sort of take ideas and throw a prompt into the terminal and start interacting with data in a way that, would take humans a lot longer. All right, so it seems to be chugging through no problem. All right, so now it's giving us a summary of what's happened. Yeah, nothing looks suspicious here. Parent process rapid create terminal cycle suggests automated connection attempts. Machine tagged as beacon and server. That's correct. High frequency of SSH connection attempts. Potentially brute force activity. Like I said, it's just sitting there facing the public for years now. I'm actually surprised it hasn't been pwned. So yeah, that's just a very quick, simple demo to show you how easy it is to go from your LimaCharlie account to Claude Code and start talking to the data in your organization. I think it's super cool. And then to give you an idea of what folks are building with this in the real world, we're going to pass things over to Eric Capuano, one of the founders of the Digital Defense Institute, who is going to show us what he's been building against LimaCharlie's MCP server. Over to you, Eric.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for inviting me. Pretty exciting topic, actually. It's something I've been spending a fair amount of time with here recently because it's evident to me that, the way that LLMs are just exponentially improving, obviously still not perfect, but you can see the progress that, the big organizations behind them are making in making these tools better and faster and smarter. But where it really gets interesting is when you can couple them with an MCP like LimaCharlie's, because now I have, the capabilities of the LLM, which I can fine tune and tweak to my specific use case. I can now directly interface with platforms that do important things, right? So what I wanted to show you all today is kind of a proof of concept I have of leveraging Claude Code as a chat interface for directly interfacing with LimaCharlie. But I've taken it a few steps further, because one of the cool things I like about Claude Code is I can heavily customize its behavior, right? So Claude Code will read in, instruction files that you provide it. And by default, it will always read in this claude.md here in the root directory that you launch it from. So you can kind of use that as a starting point, right? I can say, okay, so my basic Claude instructions that I always want followed in this repository are effectively it's a markdown file full of specific instructions, ways that I want it to behave, ways I want it to do things. And it's great because I can actually create sort of like a hierarchy of instructions. So I have additional files being read in a subdirectory here that have more specific functions, right? Like where I have many different LSQL examples defined. I even have a whole collection of sample events so that it kind of understands what LimaCharlie events generally look like, so that when it's preparing an LSQL query or something else that requires that knowledge, it can call upon those sample events that I provided to be more accurate in building its outputs. So that's super helpful, because now Claude isn't just using its general training to do the tasks. It's actually using effectively system prompts that I've given it that give it more expertise, more context around what it is I'm trying to accomplish here. So as you kind of see in my directory structure here, I've got various other items, like, for instance, corpus of detection rules that I want it to be able to reference, sets of instructions. I even keep, for instance, a chat archive. So as I'm using Claude to perform, say, a triage investigation, we're constantly tuning and tweaking as we go. If I recognize through its workflow that it didn't necessarily do the thing I wanted it to do, well, one, I take that as an opportunity to go improve my Claude MD files. But let's say an investigation goes incredibly smoothly. Claude did all the things that I wanted it to do, and I thought that the outcome was a very good outcome. Well, then I'll export that conversation into my chat archive to kind of use that as another reference point for Claude to say, hey, these are investigations that went really well. So you can sort of go back and replay them and understand what the most effective steps were in that investigation. So let's go ahead and just jump in and give it a try, right? Now, keep in mind, this is live, right? I didn't pre-script this or anything. So it's only going to be as good as it can based on all the instructions I've provided it and just, the general variables that may occur here. But let's give it a try. So I'm going to go ahead and execute Claude here in this working directory. And I can kind of confirm that it has read in my instruction files by hitting /status. And so I can see here that it has my personal Claude MD, which is in my home directory on my MacBook here, which is just kind of like universal instructions that I want Claude to follow. But then it has also recognized that this project has its own Claude MD and even nested instructions that are imported within it. So I can confirm, okay, great. It has my instructions, right? It knows the things that I need it to know so that we can, get some good work done here. Now, another thing that I absolutely have to, keep in mind is I need to link Claude to the LimaCharlie MCP, which I've previously done. And I can validate that that is correct and that, we're properly connected by running /MCP and seeing LimaCharlie here saying that it is connected. And if I even expand on that, I can just get some additional information, like there's my URL for the LimaCharlie MCP, the specific config file that contains credentials and all that good stuff, and then even the list of tools. And I kind of like that because it gives me the idea of, oh, well, let's see, what all can this MCP do, right? So I can kind of explore all the exposed functions that MCP provides. But see, Claude Code already has that context now. it has already read in all of those tools and their usage. So it kind of understands what's capable, what's possible, what specific arguments need to be provided when you call one of these tools. So that's good. We're ready to go. Let's go ahead and start with, for instance, a typical workflow. Let's ask Claude to go and get recent detections out of LimaCharlie. Let's get all recent detections in LimaCharlie worthwhile of investigation. So what it's going to do is it's going to reference what LimaCharlie MCP tools help it gather this information. Now you see, because I've informed it that LimaCharlie speaks in UTC timestamps. So it knows that before it can make that call, it needs to get right now's time in UTC. So that was the first thing it did. Now it's pulling historic detections from the org that I'm connected to. So it says, hey, we found 10 high priority detections related to suspicious run DLL 32 activity on 2 different Windows systems. It says this is a critical investigation. Let's kind of see what it's doing. So it's built itself a checklist of things it's going to do. Let's make sure those sensors are online so that we can actually kind of dive into them and get more information. But it's saying already, based on what it knows, that it suspects Cobalt Strike might be involved. And I'm guessing that it's worked that out simply because Run DLL 32 here is exhibiting the types of things that are commonly associated with Cobalt Strike. But okay, it's an interesting theory, but let's see how well it validates its theory there. So it's saying here, potential Cobalt Strike, saying, this system here has Run DLL 32, making network connections to this external IP. And so does this one here. So we got these 2 systems both. And it also correctly calls out that the reason Run DLL 32 is suspicious, in addition to the fact that it's making outbound network connections, is that the command line arguments are sort of invalid, because generally you would expect to see a DLL in the command line arguments for Run DLL 32. And it appears that these do not have that, which it properly recognized as classic Cobalt Strike behavior. So, okay, it's working out those network connections and understanding that that IP address is actually owned by Google Cloud. So if this is actual attacker infrastructure, then it must be hosted maybe in GCP. Run DLL 32 is running a system, which I would say is pretty unusual, and that could be indicative of a privilege escalation. So I would agree with its findings so far. Continued on, it's doing some additional things according to its own checklist, checking that that sensor is online. Both of them appear to be. It's getting some OS version information from each system, maybe to work out, what the operating system versions are. So we've got Server 2022 and Windows 10 Pro. And now it looks like it's digging deeper into the Run DLL 32 processes themselves. So it's crafting its own LCQL, right? And it's trying to dive in deeper to maybe work out, hey, give me all new process and existing process events containing Run DLL 32 where there's no DLL in the command line arguments, right? And you notice it's going through a few iterations here of various different LCQL queries. And then it also went ahead and just enumerated all the running processes on one of these sensors, where it's actually able to confirm beyond what just historical data says. It's saying, no, according to the right now state of that system, that PID is still running on this machine. So it has now decided to search for Cobalt Strike indicators specifically in memory, since that process ID is still active. Okay, so it kicked off a find strings against that process ID 3788. That's a pretty targeted approach. I like that. And it looks like it's searching for some of the most common strings that you're likely to find in a poorly customized Cobalt Strike beacon payload, like reflective loader. It's definitely a good one. As well as, some of the other common, these look like some of the default SMB named pipes that may be present in a beacon, so some pretty solid strings here. Okay, but it looks like it hit some kind of timeout on that command. I'm curious how it navigated that. So next it ran get process modules. That's a pretty smart move, because now it's going to say, show me all the DLLs, loaded by this 3788. And this is pretty cool, because it was able to work out from all those loaded modules that the Run DLL 32 process had win.inet.dll loaded. which many folks might be aware that WinINet is one of the most common DLLs that you see loaded when a process needs the ability to communicate across networks, specifically across the internet, because it gives it the ability to make HTTP connections. So if we're trying to, run down a theory of this being a possible C2 beacon, the presence of WinINet DLL is a pretty strong indicator that it may very well be just that. So, okay, it's continuing on with some additional LCQL queries here. Looks like it ran this query here, looking at network connections for Run DLL32 over the last 30 minutes. For one reason or another, it doesn't look like it found any hits. So it extended the time range. And looks like it just went back an hour instead of only 30 minutes. And this time it did have results. So you can see here, there were obviously many lines returned from that query. And with those results, it looks like it was able to work out that it does in fact look like beaconing behavior because it saw many connections to the same C2 server. Okay, that's good, good data point. But now it's going to look for how the process came to be in the first place. What launched it, right? So, and that's obviously an excellent investigative question because Run DLL32 didn't just magically start running. Something had to have launched it, which may be the thread we'd have to pull on in order to work out possible persistence mechanisms. Okay, so it ran a query to try to identify maybe parent process information. So it's looking for new processes where the PID is 3788 or the PID is 2680, which I'm guessing is the parent process ID that it identified for Run DLL32. All right, looks like it's got to keep going though. Maybe it's refining its information here. So it's just refocusing its query. Okay, so it's saying the malicious Run DLL32 was not captured in process creation events. It's interesting. So it's looking for signs of process injection or child processes. All right, doesn't look like it came up with anything substantial with that query. And it's going to now pivot and look at the second system. So on the second system, it's now working out the details around Run DLL32. And looks like it's probably working out. It's got very common similarities between the two systems. So it may be shortcutting here now to kind of a summary of its findings. Maybe it's got pretty high confidence. So let's see what it has to say here in the summary. It's saying, yes, this is the critical security incident because it's confident that this is a Cobalt Strike compromise because it has confirmed the beacon on two systems with the C2 server of this IP and that port. It has given me the process ID of each infected process and some key indicators of compromise, being the Run DLL32 with the absent expected command line arguments, the presence of WinINet DLL loaded in each of those processes. It's running a system. It appears to be performing regular beaconing to a possible C2 server. And it's giving me kind of a time frame of when that process creation came to be. And just kind of confirming that, hey, look, it looks like, interestingly, Run DLL32 was launched approximately at the same time on both of these systems, which is noteworthy. And then sort of the period of time it observed some of this beaconing activity and even how many connections it saw in that period of time. So it's very aggressively recommending it's time to isolate these systems. Right? So it's prepared, but it is not authorized to fire off the isolate network command on those sensors. Now, this is a really important thing to call out, right? So as I'm working with Claude Code over time, I'm able to kind of give it instructions over which commands is it authorized to go ahead and run automatically, which is, by the way, why this investigation just kind of ran away, because I've authorized it to run safe commands like running LCQL queries or just enumerating data about endpoints, because these are all generally safe commands. The worst thing that's going to happen is it sends a bad query, or it sends a query that brings back too much data, which it will do from time to time, and it's pretty good at kind of recovering from those types of situations. But what I do not authorize it to do without my intervention is something that's going to make an impact. Right? Like isolating a system, right? So I love that kind of flexibility and that customization, and you can really make it yours, right? You can really get really specific about the permissions that it has and what it's able to do on its own. But what I think is really neat about this is 100% accurate, by the way. This investigation summary is 100% what's happening on those two systems. This is a lab environment, so I have the insights of knowing what's really going on. And it is, in fact, Cobalt Strike beacons on both of those machines running inside of Run DLL32. Now, obviously, there's still room for improvement here. This is a very early proof of concept. But what's really cool is as I go through these iterations, I'm going to go ahead and tell it, no, do not isolate these systems. As I go through these iterations, I can just simply provide it additional context. Like, we absolutely, want to be sure that we identify persistence, use all available MCP tools to perform a thorough investigation around possible persistence, right? And what I can do to kind of immortalize that guidance is say, please update my Claude instruction files with this guidance, right? That way, it's not just going to help it right now in this one investigation, but it's going to take note of that in its permanent instruction set so that all future investigations take that into account, right? So again, what I like about it is, of course, if you just fire it up out of the blue, it's going to be so-so. And actually, I will admit, it's not bad. With no prior instructions, with no additional context, it is actually not terrible. It's pretty decent, but it only gets better and better and better as you provide those insights, right? As you give it that investigative sort of context on, where it needs to double down its focus, and even sometimes where it need not go, right? Sometimes it veers off into strange, areas in its flow, and that's to be expected. But that's why, again, as you infuse it with your knowledge, your expertise, your experience of efficient and effective investigations, it factors that in, so it does get better and smarter the more that you use it. So anyway, hope that was interesting and, super exciting stuff. And, huge thanks to the team at LimaCharlie for building and exposing this MCP and especially providing some really cutting edge capabilities. Like, for instance, one of the MCP tools I think is quite impressive, and I want other folks to know about it, is the ability to generate LCQL queries from plain text language or even detection rules. And I just think that that's fascinating because, being honest, LCQL is not the easiest thing sometimes to wrap your head around. And so the fact that I can call this tool right here and say, hey, I want an LCQL query that'll go and find processes in the last 24 hours that exhibit signs of X. I can just give it that instruction. And Claude doesn't have to figure out the LCQL. It'll call that MCP tool, and that MCP tool will work it out and give Claude the ideal LCQL query to run. And, again, I could do the same thing. Say, hey, turn this activity into a DNR rule, and it's able to do that. And so really impressive capabilities here. And I am excited to kind of see where it goes as it evolves and gets smarter and more mature. So, all right. Thanks so much for having me on, Chris. And back to you.
Eric, thank you so much for being with us here today. And before we wrap things up, I'm curious, Maxime, where do you see this going and how does our approach ensure we're going to be able to keep up with this technology?
That's a good question. Fundamentally, who knows, right? It's kind of the unsatisfying question, meaning things move so fast that I think the best thing that we are doing, the thing that will ensure that we kind of are able to stay at the edge there, is by taking an approach that is where we are not over indexing on very complex things today, right? We try to make the integration into the latest technologies really, really easy and kind of like at the infrastructure level, which sounds, it sounds daunting, but it really isn't. All it really means is that, we want to use the best technologies like MCP that, just come out and be able to leverage those. And because we're taking this unopinionated and cloud platform kind of approach, it means that it's easy for us to do that. The other part of it is the thing that we really want to provide for folks is a great environment for them to bring in their own AI or to build really their AI capabilities within the platform, right? To add their own. That's where the AI agent kind of like comes in, is we don't want people to be forced to go and stand up all of these other big pieces of infrastructure. We want people to be able to, using a prompt, automate a huge part of their job. Really just simplify the scaling that they have to do, right? Because especially if you I keep coming back to it, but especially if you're a service provider and you have 5,000 customers, this one product that has one web console that works great for enterprise is a non-starter for you. But now if you start to look at it from the perspective of like, I have infrastructure as code, my prompts are propagated through infra as code, and all of my agents can operate, you with variables and like all of that. Now you're really starting to automate. And if you're a service provider, that's life and death.
Awesome. So that brings us to the end of today's session. We've covered a lot of ground, from our foundational philosophy to real-world AI integrations and the tools we're giving security teams to stay in control as this technology continues to evolve. Whether it's our support bot, the rule building assistant, native LLM playbooks, or the secure and powerful MCP server, our goal remains the same: to give you the flexibility to build your security operations your way. If you want to dive deeper, test things out, or just start experimenting with AI in your own workflow, everything we've shown you today is accessible on our free tier, which you can access at LimaCharlie.io. No credit card required. Just get in there, join our community forum, community.limacharlie.io. Start talking to us. Let's make some cool stuff. We're really excited to see what you do with it. And yeah, thanks again for spending time with us. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out if you want to talk some more. Take care. Cheers.